Welcome to the Sport Businessman Podcast. Today we host Robbie Douek, the CEO who scaled Blast from a single tournament concept into one of the world's leading esports entertainment companies, putting together top-tier event production with global competitive gaming. Robbie, it is an honor to be hosting you on the show today. How are you?
Great. It's absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm always happy to support the ecosystem and the gaming community at large from far and wide. So it's really great to be here.
So the gaming industry is now worth over $200 billion, and that number is only going to be getting bigger. But can you share with us your background and what first convinced you that esports was a real business opportunity?
Look, I really believe that the global gaming market is going to grow exponentially over the period of the next 5 to 10 years. As you cited before, it's a 200 billion market currently. The global gaming market and the esports market sits within that. Um, but it has an infinite TAM, right? The reality around the global gaming market is very exciting because there's only ever going to be more people playing games. There's only going to be more titles that are released into the world. There's only going to be ever more casual gaming that comes into play. And so that's only ever going to grow. As the population increases, so does the global gaming market, the global gaming population that play those games. And so when you put all that together, I'm in a very strong mindset that, being at the forefront of that is a really wonderful place to be. And you can grow big businesses. As long as you position yourself from a business standpoint within a sector that's large and that is only going to accrete, you will find value on the value chain. And so that's the sort of premise of why we're here today.
Splendid. And what was Blast originally created to solve in the esports ecosystem? As you mentioned before, there's only going to be more titles that are going to be created, but what was Blast originally created to solve in the esports ecosystem?
Yeah, I look, we set about trying to revolutionize the world of esports and gaming, right? And competitive entertainment, we like to call it. And so we decided that we would disrupt what is the current way of a viewing experience and an arena experience by trying to create something far more premium in the world of esports. And so we set about that journey in 2018. We set about trying to revolutionize a format around a game called Counter-Strike. We changed the way that you play the game across it. We changed the format, we changed the staging, we changed the output, the broadcast, etc. So we were a real disruptor before sort of sports disruption started, which is more recent, right? And that then led to and bore a lot of fruit, right? In the sense that we were seen as the best broadcasters in town, the best producers in town. And slowly by slowly, we started picking up more and more of what we call ecosystems, which are games that we operate globally and exclusively around the planet. And those include things like Fortnite and Rocket League and others, and I can talk about them more. But that was the premise. The premise was to grow a fantastic media and entertainment company, which is built around competitive sport and competitive entertainment. And that is what we have today.
And when you started, did you already know the 4 to 5 year outlook, what it was going to look like, or you had to first develop a test to see if, like a first version of Blast, to test the market, and how did that look like compared to today?
Yeah, we realized that we needed to try and do things differently, and so we came out the gates fast and tried to upset the kind of current business models that exist, and that gave us some success. But also, we then needed to keep working incredibly hard. Listen, Eduardo, it's never easy building a business from the ground up. You go through great moments, but you also go through hard times, and don't forget that in the middle of all of that, you had the pandemic. And the pandemic for esports, whilst the viewership was very high, the monetization suffered in the same way that traditional sports and others suffered too. And so we had to compete with those external forces as well. But I think we have been very deliberate about how we've designed this business. And I think that, I would have liked to have been where we were today 2 years earlier, but we're still where we are today, and it's still a very strong position.
Blended. And when you had to develop the the commercial architecture for after your first versions and after assessing the first developmental years of the business, what were the main revenues of the business?
Yeah, look, I think when we started out, we were very dependent on. It's interesting, actually, things evolved. We had quite a lot of media broadcast revenue deals with linear takers, actually, at that point in time. We had some deals in the market with even the non-linear partners who were paying minimum guarantees, and things have changed since then. But we were probably quite dependent on sponsorship revenue, I have to say. And I think that any business, unless you are, the tentpole leading light within a game or a sport that is wholly dependent on sponsorship, is going to struggle because the market is not always going to return what you need at that point in time. So you need to diversify. You need to be in a place where you've got other media revenue streams. And we did that quite quickly. We realized that we needed other revenue streams, and we managed to diversify from there.
Are the revenue streams, are there, when did you start noticing that there could be opportunity for recurring revenue streams, or is it only one-time revenue streams that happen, like sponsorships and media rights deals? Um,
No, no, I mean, actually, we've been fortunate now to move into a world where there is recurring revenue from the sponsorship deals because ultimately they're multi-year deals. You have multi-year deals with media broadcasters. You have ticketing deals, which again are baked in guarantees because promoters across the planet want to access your live shows. I mean, we have a very valuable product. Multi-year city deals, which basically means that you bring your content to a given destination. That's very exciting, and then in-game revenues as well, which is passed back from the publishers, etc. So we've been able to diversify those revenue streams and get guarantees, which have, I think, shored up the business. But yeah, sure, we're still very reliant on us doing smart deals with big sponsors, and we've been very lucky and deliberate about some of those too.
Splendid. And so today, where who is the main consumer of the Blast product? Is it and what does their like age look like?
Yeah, look, the main consumers differ by game. So depending on the game in question, you will find that the average age of a consumer differs. If you take something like Counter-Strike, you've got players from probably, you know, anywhere from 16 to 45 or 40 odd, because that game's been around for a long time. Fortnite skews a little bit younger. Rocket League will skew into the 20s. Things like Brawl Stars, which is the biggest mobile game on the planet, is skewing into the teens. And again, these are markets where you've probably got a 70-30 or an 80-20 split male female. And then the geos differ as well, right? So you'll end up with certain games in certain territories like Rainbow Six, for example, which is hugely popular in Brazil. And certain other games are popular in other demos in parts of the world, like India or in Southeast Asia or in China, for example. You've got games like Dota, for example, which are hugely popular, believe it or not, in Peru. So really, it is catering to a global audience in terms of who is really interested in those titles, and then you're catering to the demo that sits behind that.
Okay, and to understand, for to help the audience also to understand, are the consumers the professional players that show up in the tournaments, or are they the viewers who are watching the professional player streams and the streams of the tournaments?
No, no. I mean, then what we have is we've got obviously a big cohort of players who are playing, but they are essentially the participants, right, within our tournament base. The consumers are the millions of people, the eyeballs that are watching that content, whether they're watching it online through one of our channels on YouTube or Twitch, or they're attending an event in a venue, right? So if we hosted, a few weeks ago, we were in Paris, in Paris La Défense, which is the biggest indoor arena in Europe, actually. And in there, we fit 15 to 20,000 spectators who are coming to see a show and watch Rocket League. And it's a bit like going to buy a ticket for, your biggest pop star, for example, and they come in and watch, and they are the consumers.
Okay, splendid. Thank you for clarifying this. I was reading about a one of the finals that were hosted a few months ago that on YouTube received more than a million views. That's like a FIFA World Cup game on streaming on Dazan today. So I found the numbers very interesting to learn as well, and I found it interesting to share with the audience as well the size of viewership
Oh,
that.
it's big. I mean, on an average competition, you're talking about, a million, north of a million live concurrent people watching a game at the same time, right? So it's the same as, an NBA game or a Premier League football match. And some of these peak up at 2.5 million, so the numbers can really rise. And then if you take into consideration on top of that, some of the Southeast Asian and Chinese audiences, you can get even higher.
Okay, splendid. And can you help us to understand what is the role that publishers play with a business in this place, and also the control with the IP and the data that comes with it?
Yeah, sure. So, ultimately the publishers own the games, they own the IP that sits off of those games. And then we have contracts with the publishers most of the time on an exclusive basis to operate titles on their behalf. And so we operate the competitive esports and gaming on behalf of those publishers, whether that's Riot Games or Epic Games or Ubisoft, for example. And so those contracts are very lengthy contracts, which give us a certain cohort of rights as well, and interconnected into that. But of course, we're constantly making sure that the publisher is satisfied with the output, and that we are in direct conversation with them. And most of the time, our teams are pretty well integrated.
Okay, splendid. And can you when a question that we find interesting as for fandom, when what was most surprising to you about the fandom in esports when you started to put your product the product of Blast out there, and when you first saw it live in tournaments like you just mentioned in Paris a few weeks ago, and in your first tournaments living them?
Yeah, look, I think the reality there is when I first walked into a stadium and I saw the fervor, the absolute desire and strength and depth of the audience in terms of how much they love the content. It's like going to a Roma game, versus AC Milan or whatever whatever your penchant is, right? There is an unbelievable amount of passion in that venue, and that translates into incredible spectacle, that translates into great content, that translates into great monetization. And I looked at that and I went, that is cool, that is exciting. But you don't expect it, right? In the sense that most people who haven't been to this stuff, they're like, but they're like kids playing video games. What the hell's going on here? And actually, when you walk into a venue and you see the spectacle, the sound, the lights, the action, all the hoopla that goes with it, it's like an NBA game, right? And these are global stars. And when they see it for the first time, they're like, huh, now I get it, right? But you got to be converted. Otherwise, you just think there are a bunch of guys on the server playing computer games. And it's not just that, because it takes a lot of hard work.
So for the entrepreneurs interested in entering the space, but maybe they don't look to be in the core business like tournament operations, or in a direct team involvement, but still find it interesting to create value in this space and adjacent to it. Um, is Can you help us to understand what is the why does the fan want to come back? Is it because of the fan experience, as you mentioned, from the spectacle, or is it also because there's an infrastructure opportunity around it of, all the things that the viewer can consume when they're attending the game?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I think there's two parts to it, which I think you hit, right? Which is that if you turn up at an event or a show that is Rocket League or Fortnite or Brawl or whatever, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do when you're in the venue, right? It's almost like a festival. So you're playing with stuff, there are activations, you're meeting creators, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, right? And as a fan of a game, you want to be there. It's a bit different to football in a sense. If you turn up to a football or a soccer game, you're really going for the soccer game, right? Maybe not now in America with the World Cup, because actually they've kind of adapted that to a bit with the NBA with these hydration breaks. But anyway, The flip side of that argument is that um, it is an immense opportunity for fans to do something that they love. In the same way that you and I might buy, my team is, by the way, Tottenham. Not great
Yeah,
at the moment. We have a great Italian manager now, so
I see.
hopefully,
The Zero.
hopefully we're in a
Yes,
good place.
Rotterdam.
The Zerbi is going to change the world, right? So when I look forward to going to a Tottenham game, I mean, believe it or not, right? I look forward to it because I love it. I turn up. I'm excited by the pre-moment before. I'm excited by when the players walk out, the sound, the light, the excitement, when the first goal is scored, etc., etc. And that's the same, by the way, for an esports fan. They turn up 2 hours before, they queue, they're wearing all sorts of dress, they're buying merchandise, they're buying consumer products within the venue. They're running in to get the best seats. They're taking photos and selfies and posting content. It's like a hugely important moment from, and why? This is where this is different. It's scarce. Why is it scarce? Because if you're a fan of Fortnite, you might get to see a Fortnite Worlds once in your city, maybe every 10 years, every 15 years. You're not going to get them all the time. I could go to Tottenham 20 times a season. You could go to Roma 20 times a season, right? But if you want to watch a Fortnite game live in your city and you're a young teenager or early 20s, you might get to see that show once. And so it's the most important moment in time. So you're first in line to buy a ticket in the same way that you're queuing up on Live Nation to buy tickets for or Ticketmaster to buy tickets for Taylor Swift or whatever it is you're buying. It's the same thing.
Thank you. And for the final question to our audience, we find it very interesting to understand which are and the growth outlook of Blast, which are going to be the markets that are most exciting for Blast over the next 5 years, and what is it going to look like in 2030 if everything, of course, is going to grow successful.
Look, I'm okay from a geo perspective, from a market perspective, hugely excited by actually probably three places in the world. I'm excited by America, believe it or not, because um, I think there is a massive market around gaming and esports, which is yet to be really uncovered in a meaningful way. Massively excited about India because of the size of the population and the propensity for technology. The smartphone penetration in India is absolutely large. 5G penetration is insanely good through our partners, Geo, and Southeast Asia, in and around mobile gaming. So that's from a geo perspective. From a gaming perspective, there are games that have never even been created yet that are still to launch in the market. And that means that we can turn our hand to that. We can use our platform to be able to deliver against those titles. People forget that things like Fortnite have only been around for 10 or 12 years, right? And yet the biggest next game of the future may not have even come out. And so by 2030, we could all be playing completely different games. Roblox as a destination or a platform 5 years ago, 7 years ago was a thing, right? But now it's the thing, right? And Brookhaven and Among Us and all these titles are just like what everyone's on. So I'm very excited about the advent of casual games turn transitioning into competitive entertainment as well. Yeah, I think that's probably where we go.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Robbie, for explaining to us the birth of Blast, the incredible opportunity that gaming offers today for new entrepreneurs, explaining to us the start of developing the revenue stream and the commercial architecture together with the value that can be created and the growth outlook of the future the future markets, which are going to be interesting for the growth of Blast.
Look, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be on the show. Looking forward to meeting you in person. You have to come to one of our events in the near future, whether in Italy or in anywhere in Europe or in America as well.
Absolutely.